Under what circumstances does the system perceive two people as a whole, and therefore reduce their combined existential volume if it exceeds one unit? Is it when they get married, when they live together without being married, or even when they are just dating? This is a very good and profound question, and understanding it can reveal a great deal about our own lives and the universe in general. The mathematics, the pure mathematics that we observe in the reality that surrounds us, is invisible to most people unless they have the desire or habit of perceiving our reality as a kind of mathematical model. Even if we do not fully understand these mathematical laws, but simply assume their existence, accepting that everything we observe and experience follows certain mathematical principles, can explain much and offer insights into what we should do next. In particular, Marina asked about how two or more consciousnesses connect within the framework of existing life, within the framework of the current manifestation. Is it a coincidence, or is there an underlying order? Do people connect randomly, or is there a specific pattern? Those of you who have been studying at my school for a while, or who have been attending our meetings regularly, are already familiar with this mathematical model. However, I will take the liberty of unfolding it again and reminding you of it. The mathematical model in which we exist, and within which each person's consciousness operates, is in a sense based on a number. But this is not a number in the conventional sense. Rather, it is a specific unit of measurement that we call a number for simplicity. We could just as easily call it a kilogram, a liter, or something else. Ultimately, it is a measurable quantity, and if something can be measured, it must be expressed in some unit of measurement. It is generally accepted that a person's consciousness can also be measured in units. This unit is called existential volume and represents how much a person's consciousness weighs. In different eras, times and systems, this unit has varied in its characteristics, with existential volume being defined by different parameters. Today, existential volume is thought to be measured by awareness, reason, and experience. In earlier times, it was measured by military victories. Before that, it might have been measured by the amount of wealth or booty a person could acquire. Later, it was associated with financial success and the ability to accumulate resources. The existential volume has been defined differently in different eras. We are now living in an era where existential volume is understood as the combined, continuous, and valuable experience of each individual. Valuable experience means having the ability to apply it to reality, to change reality through your experience, knowledge, and wisdom. All of these qualities must find practical application in the real world. Knowledge in itself is simply a package of information that cannot be directly applied to reality and therefore does not change it in any particular space and time. As such, knowledge is not considered to be experience. It serves as an informational base, potentially capable of becoming experience, but not necessarily so. It should not be considered an experience simply because it exists. In contemporary thought, the greater the existential volume of a person, the higher their consciousness is considered to be. Various systems offer different levels of opportunities to individuals with significant existential volume. There are many such systems, not an infinite number, of course, but certainly numerous. For instance, some systems place a person with high existential volume on the level of a ruler, thus giving them high status within a caste system. In contrast, other systems, particularly certain religious systems, may consider a person with significant experience to be more harmful than useful to the system itself. And you're probably familiar with such a system. So it all depends on the system. This was essentially an introduction to answering the question of our esteemed colleague Marina. The connection between two people to form a complete unit is a universal rule in all systems. People complete each other to form a whole. However, how the system determines the existential volume and where it places a person depends on the program of that specific system. The point is that the rule is the same for everyone. When people are connected, they must create a certain kind of whole, meaning their collective consciousness must form a single unit. However, which part of a person's consciousness the system uses to create this unit does not depend on the individual, but on the system itself. More precisely, and using our terminology, it depends on the egregores. For example, the egregore of family and kin evaluates your consciousness based on its own parameters and connects you with others according to those criteria. You might have vast reincarnational experience, but this could be irrelevant to the family and kin egregore. Instead, it might disregard this experience and prioritize aspects such as your fertility, earning potential, or some other specific skill or mastery. Other aspects of your consciousness are neither discarded nor considered. They are simply ignored by the family and kin egregore. So when a colleague asks under what circumstances the system perceives two people as a whole, my answer is, it depends on the system itself. In other words, on which egregore governs your life. Christianity has one algorithm for evaluation, family and kin have another, the government has its own, and professional systems follow yet another. And the answer to this question depends on which dominant egregore controls your consciousness and the agreements you have made with it. Once you understand the egregorial system that governs you, it becomes immediately clear where to find the answer to this question. You simply need to look at that system and ask, what does it value most in people? Here, it is very important not to make a mistake in defining this. So how can you avoid making such a mistake? To do this, you need to ask yourself another question. Which egregorial system has the greatest influence on my life? Which one do I have to consider all the time? Is it religion, the government, my professional egregore, family and kin, spontaneous formations, new interests, fashion, the ever-changing processes of information use, or perhaps the financial institutions with which I interact? If our colleagues now display the scheme of the egregorial hierarchy, you will see everything clearly. Here it is. The scheme of the egregorial hierarchy. Egregores are subordinate to a strict hierarchy. A person may feel deeply connected to their family and kin, But when higher formations, higher egregorial structures, issue an impulse for change, the family and kin must comply. For example, if war is declared and the government orders that everyone must go to war, a family and kin will have to allocate a certain number of people from their structure. Can a family resist? They can, but doing so would put them in direct conflict with the government. This hierarchy is outlined in many of my books, including one specifically for egregores, where each egregorial level is described in detail. In any case, you must answer the question very clearly: under which egregore do you live? And the fewer illusions you have in answering this question, the greater your clarity will be. For example, if you are under the egregore of your professional field, your professional egregore, you must ask yourself, what does it value most? What qualities of mind and consciousness does it prioritize as key, as most important from its perspective? Is it professionalism, loyalty, adaptability, or the ability to learn quickly? Different professional egregores assign distinct tasks to their, shall we say, adepts or members, and the quality needed to accomplish these tasks is the one they will emphasize in you. They will evaluate you and determine the weight of your consciousness accordingly. The higher the level of the egregore, the more aspects of consciousness it can emphasize as key. However, only the gods can perceive the entire consciousness as a whole without denying any part of it, because they see a person as a projection of themselves. As a result, they don't fragment that projection because it simply doesn't interest them. A complete consciousness either perceives contact with them, or it doesn't. An incomplete consciousness cannot perceive contact with the gods, and that is clear. Egregores, on the other hand, fragment consciousness by selecting only the qualities they need. This is precisely why in the mathematical and magical models that we study in our school, there is a very clear understanding that the lower the egregore, the more it diminishes a person's consciousness. In other words, it evaluates a person based on their lowest quality. And why does it evaluate on the basis of the lowest quality? A person is not solely defined by their family and kin or their profession. Moreover, a person is far more than just the government or religion, although these occupy the highest positions in the egregorial hierarchy within the current Abrahamic systems under which we continue to live. However, the egregores will never take the full existential volume of a person and evaluate it qualitatively. That is why this current operating system, which evaluates a person and tends to diminish him, does not do so because it wants to humiliate or diminish the person, but because it has such a mathematical model, such an algorithm of evaluation. It selects only what it needs for its own survival and ignores everything else as irrelevant. So a person may be very wise, intelligent, professional, and possess many positive qualities. But the egregore under which they live may say, I don't need any of that, I'll disregard it, I only need this one quality, and according to my algorithm you have it, but it's not sufficiently developed. You haven't invested your whole life in it, haven't nurtured it energetically, haven't spent enough time on it, and haven't developed it fully, so it's half dead. Therefore, I'm going to evaluate you as if you're half dead, even though you're doing well overall. And it will connect you with the person with whom you will complete each other to one whole. However, this is not a whole at the level of the egregore itself, but at the social or caste level where the egregore has placed you. And how does it place you at that level? By the same measure. If you haven't developed the part of you that is useful to the egregore, if you haven't nurtured it throughout your life, the egregore will consider you a low-level person. You haven't invested time in what it values, and so it will place you at a lower level. These are the paradoxes of how egregores weigh and connect people. I sincerely hope, colleagues, that I've explained this more or less clearly, as clearly as one can explain it in a short amount of time. In fact, we devote a lot of time to this topic in our lessons, especially in the main department. But we spend even more time on it in the tarot department, because tarot provides a more detailed explanation of how this weighing happens, why it happens, and for what reason. It also allows one to understand one's own consciousness from the perspective of the Sephirot tree and the Abrahamic systems that dominate this world and dictate their rules to us. This, colleague Marina, and you, dear colleagues, will be my answer to this question.